I made this video for people that can't get enough of airplanes landing on big rocks in tight places. Since I made this video, I've purchased some new camera equipment, and so this will probably be the last video I make with the old camera equipment. Anyway, enjoy. This first gravel bar I landed here was to let some air out of my tires, and looking back, I didn't actually let enough air out of my tires, but the light was going down and I wanted to keep flying, so I ran the tires with what pressure was in them, which was probably just a guess. It's probably a couple pounds. What I do is I let the tire pressure down and then I stick my knee into the tire until it feels soft and squishy, and that's my pressure gauge. As I'm flying along, I'm constantly looking for places that are open that I could land. This is an area I've been to many times, but the water comes up and it changes. So even though I've been up here for years, everything today is brand new. And in fact, I haven't been up here for probably almost a year. All the brush along the river's bank, edges, etc. has grown a lot taller. And so a lot of these gravel bars I'm looking at have little sticks and twigs and willows and alders that are growing up that I can't actually use spots that I've used over the years. There's one right here off to my right as I'm taking off, and it's a nice sized gravel bar. I've landed it before. The rocks are big, but it's got too much brush at the very approach end, which I would use water to go into it. Then I make a turn to my left here. There's another spot that is open, but there's no way I can get over the tall alders and get in there. There's a big log that goes across it, so I skip that spot and I decide to fly upriver and see about a few other places upriver that I land. There was actually a gravel bar I spotted on my way down, and as I fly upriver, I realized that there's actually a couple fishermen in this area, so I skip over that area. I try to stay away from people. People just cause problems. So I'm upriver here. I'm looking at another spot that I've landed before. Again, there's brush that's grown up too tall to get in without chopping stuff up. So I skip that spot and I continue upriver. And then there's another one that I see upriver here, and I shoot an approach into it, but there's debris and rocks that look a little bit larger than I want to land on. So I continue flying upriver, but I noticed that off to the right here, I could probably land that gravel bar if I stayed a little bit farther to the right. So I continue upriver with that in mind. What I do is I make a run and I look at as many places I think I can possibly land, and then I come back downriver and then start working my way back upriver again. One thing I noticed when I was letting the air out of my tires on that first gravel bar was there's no wind. I spot this next one right here that looks like a natural, but there's a pretty big washout, there's a log, there's a whole bunch of obstacles, and so I decide that's not a good one. I see another one right here. Again, there's pretty big rocks, pretty big obstacles. There's a couple clear spots of sand, but I don't really like that one. I figure I'll look at it one more time as I make my turn to come back downriver. See if it looks better landing it downriver versus upriver. But again, there's just too many things that I want to keep stuff out of my tail feathers. I don't really like rebuilding tail feathers. So I continue back downriver. There's an open spot here that I look at along this little channel that's kind of petering out, but not really a great spot here either. But I do spot another one coming up right here off to my right, and it's a spot that I believe I've landed in the past. It looks a little different now. It's got a couple washouts in it. The rocks are big in places, but there's actually a fairly decent section. So that one goes on my list of spots to land. So I make a turn and I set up for my approach back in there. And at this point is where my gear camera died. So everything else here is shot from the window of my Cub. I set up to hug the left bank of the river here. It's a little bit of a turning approach. I want to clear all this debris at the very beginning, the big rocks, the driftwood, and then there's a little short section here that's got some sand in it. That's where I want to touch down and try to keep my tires pretty much in the sand. This is pretty much the end of this gravel bar here. You couldn't really go much further. It gives me about 300 feet for takeoff before I get to the really rough stuff. I head downriver for that other gravel bar that I'd put on my list of gravel bars to hit. As I fly downriver, I'm still looking at potential landing zones. There's a few, but most of them are shorter than what I like and rougher as far as big rocks, so I mark those off my list. Because there's really no wind today, I use the gradient of the river and land upriver. It at least helps a little bit for slowing me down. I've set up for my approach into this gravel bar. I'm going to stay to the right. I've already determined that. It looks good, so I'm going to go ahead and land it. I try to leave myself about 250 feet no matter where I go. Unless I have water to use as a buffer, I like about 250 feet in length just to play it safe. I'm at about 2,000 feet MSL. My landing speed is around 45 miles an hour. The reason I use wheel landings is if you don't and you land this stuff, these rocks, which are anywhere from baseball size to basketball size, will fly up and take out your tail feathers. On this particular day, unfortunately, at one point during this 25 minutes of my playing around, I did pick up a rock and it hit the corner of my elevator, which put a slight dent and screwed up the fabric. So that's part of playing this off-airport game, I guess. I try to slow the airplane up as much as possible, and then when I do, just before touchdown, I push forward stick to get my tail a little bit higher. And most of the time, this strategy works, but every once in a while, you'll pick up a light rock and throw it up high enough to get your tail feathers. As I'm coming in here, I'm looking at this little short gravel bar on my left. I'm looking at this gravel bar under my nose here. Then there's a section right here off to my right. There's a whole bunch of little places that I'm looking at. As I fly through this short section, there's half a dozen spots that I'm thinking are potential landing zones. I'll fly back upriver here until I can get to a safe altitude, make a turn, fly back downriver, look at these same spots flying downriver. Then I make another turn, come back upriver with the ones that I'm actually going to land at. Unless it's a total no-brainer, like it's just an obvious place, there's no obstacles, there's nothing on the gravel bar, I usually look at a gravel bar at least twice going upriver and downriver. This gives me a very good indication of whether I can land it. It also gives me an indication of what the winds are doing, if there are winds, but usually I look at spots at least 2 times. If I have to look at them a half a dozen times, I usually don't land them. That means that there's just too many things going on. Here I'm flying back down through that short section of gravel bars that I liked. I got to climb up here pretty high to make my turn to come back into this bottom. It's a kind of a notch that I fly through here, and then I get myself set up for a slow touchdown speed. There's a smaller, shorter gravel bar right before the gravel bar I'm landing, and I just want to make sure that I'm not going to drag a wing going around that corner. And this gravel bar here is probably almost twice the length of what I would need, but I can't use a lot of water coming into it to get myself slowed down, so I'm still going to need probably 150 feet. This is where my memory card ran out. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you did.